the trends that we see in video, and then also as a business, how we are thinking about reacting to those trends and some of the direction that we're taking. Okay? All right. So the three trends that we see are very straightforward, and they're trends that we've all been talking about in marketing and in digital and in advertising for the last several years, but I think at this point they are trends that we actually can't ignore. So the three are audience fragmentation, the many, many consumption devices, and even just looking around this room, I'm looking at smartphones and iPads, and then the trend towards what we call niche content. Okay, so the first thing to think about is audience fragmentation. If we think about, there were 10 years from The Cosby Show to Seinfeld to American Idol. The Cosby Show was the 1988. There were 26 channels that you could watch on television, and Cosby was the #1 show and had a GRP, a rating of 25. What that literally means is that of the people that tune into television, 25% were tuning into The Cosby Show. The most watched ever program. We watched it during dinner. We used to watch MASH, Bob Newhart, and Hogan's Heroes during dinner. That was dinner time in the 70s. But was the final episode of MASH, which had an audience of 50 million viewers. It was 77% share. Okay, so keep that number in mind. 50 million viewers, 77% share. That is the most watched ever television program. Remember, the theme here is fragmentation as we look at what happens from the 80s to the 90s, and here we are in the year 2012. Okay, so Cosby has a 25% share. Seinfeld, right, 10 years later, has a 22% share. American Idol in 1998, right, at that point there are 52 channels. Sorry, Seinfeld in 2012, American Idol, there are 100 basic channels. We all know there are hundreds, right, of cable separate channels. American Idol had a 6% share. Okay? Modern Family, which is one of our all-time favorite shows. People who watch it just love it. 4 million viewers per episode, right, a 6% share. So think about that. If you only remember a few numbers, MASH, final episode, 1983, 50 million people, 77% share of the total audience tuning in. Okay, so you get where I'm going. Just remember that stat, and then think Modern Family, like last season, 4 million viewers per episode, 6% share. Right, you can think about Idol. Okay, so you can see the ratings. So the point on fragmentation, we can do these comparisons, is that this is not something that is happening a couple years from now. This is something that has happened, and I sometimes say we can accelerate right into a wall if we don't actually recognize what's really happened with audiences. So the second thing to think about is, where are people watching and consuming all of this content? Right? We are no longer living in what we used to call a 2-screen, 3-screen world. We're really living in a world that is more like a 5, 6, 7 screen. So think for a minute about your iPad, your tablet, right? And think how you acquired it. If you got it as a gift, or if you just went out and bought it. So Apple was the first consumer electronics company ever who, in the first 90 days of having a product in market, had sold in an install base of over 3 million units for a product that cost somewhere between $600 and $900. Okay, so just think about that for a minute. There are hundreds of tablets that were announced at CES this past January, and there will be hundreds more tablets that will be announced at CES this January 2013. The rate of proliferation and the rate of consumers accessing and buying these devices is stunning. So when you look at the consumption devices and the audience fragmentation, we're looking at a completely new world. These are really simple concepts. If you are a marketer and an advertiser, you need to fish where the fish are, right? You need to be where the people are. The thing that is so challenging today is to figure out, right, how to do this. Okay, so what is literally happening? People are streaming off of Netflix. They're buying last season's Mad Men off of iTunes, right? They're accessing content off of Hulu. They're in all these different places. And what doesn't come along with that content? Someone? Ads, right? So the 15s and the 30s don't come along, and that's the reality that we all need to be thinking about as marketers. Okay, so we often hear a statistic that says, well, wait a minute. You know, if we look at the statistics and we look at the average TV viewer still watches 5 hours of TV a day. So when you look at the data, you can find data that's going to counter what I've just been articulating. But if you actually break it up, and these are into quintiles, right? What you actually see is that there is a very different profile of the light TV viewer and the heavy TV viewer. And what you see is that the heavy TV viewer, which is the heavy set, I'll make him heavy set. Here we go. He just got big, right? The heavy TV viewer consumes almost 7.5 hours of TV. The light TV viewer only consumes about 1.6 hours. Okay? So, well, we can say that people will come back and say, okay, but wait a minute, the average TV viewer watches over 5 hours of TV a day. It doesn't actually break out that way when you look at the impact. Okay, so the other trend that we see, so those two trends are audience fragmentation and the consumption devices, right, what we're seeing there. The other trend that we see is this trend towards niche content. And people will get as specific with their content as they can. So if you think for a minute about something that you have a passion for, right? So Christina has a passion for football, right? It might not just be football that she has a passion for. It might be high school football rivalries in the town in, New Jersey where she was raised, okay? It's not just the NFL. Someone may have a passion for cooking, but it's not cooking, it's actually vegan desserts, right? If you think about horses, there is a massive difference between barrel racing, which I think is my graphic, and 3-day eventing, which is actually the Olympic event that if we all watch the Olympics. How much 3-day eventing did you see? Almost none, right? But it is an Olympic event, and there was 3-day eventing in this year's Olympics. My point is that people will get as niche as they can possibly get. There is not a cable channel in the world that can afford, that has the resources to program this kind of niche content. But with online video, we all know, pretty much everything and anything is available, right? So online, you have the largest corpus of content anywhere on the planet. And you can get as niche as you want to get. All right, so the trend then is towards niche content. But then the natural question you ask is, you're using the word niche. So if you're talking about niche content, then are these audiences very, very small, right? Because that doesn't mean anything to a marketer or an advertiser. If I can reach 3 people who are interested in vegan desserts and I'm Betty Crocker and I'm launching a new vegan brownie recipe, like 3 people is not quite enough. Okay, but the answer to that is no. The audiences are actually not small. And keep in mind again, that the most watched shows today on television do not garner more than 4 to 6 million viewers. Okay, so we're back to a couple minutes ago. So how big are these audiences? So when you look at Project Runway, about 2.5, less than 3 million viewers per episode. There is a program, a show on YouTube. And I'm using YouTube as a proxy for all online video, so it is the largest video sharing site, but these themes extend to all online video. Okay, so Style Hall has almost 5 million viewers per episode, right? We can look at a show called Chopped, which is on cable. It has over 1 million viewers per episode. We can look at this Indian chef. He's a blogger from Indiana. He posts videos about tandoori chicken recipes. He has over 1 million viewers per episode. So I can go through, you can take any category. If it's sport fishing, tennis, decorating, crafts, pick any category where you are likely to have a cable show, right? And then look at what the comparison is online video, and you will see that the audience sizes are comparable. So there is a trend towards niche content. We believe at Google that we are not headed towards a world of 600 channels, we are headed towards a world of 600,000 channels. Like there's an infinite amount of programming and channel opportunities. House hunters, and then a show on YouTube is essentially about renovations. All right, so again, you can go through and you can do all of these comparisons. Okay, so those are the three trends that we see in the industry. Audience fragmentation, consumption devices, those two trends point to the fact that the 30s and 60s, the way we've all been marketing, is not going to cut it as we move forward. And then the third trend is this trend towards niche content, and the reality is that the niche audiences on this type of content are often just as big as the audiences we find on Twitter. All right. So, how do these trends make us think about the direction that we're taking our business in? So, there are three focus areas for us. The first one is the user experience, the second one is our approach to content, and the third one is really our approach to the business model. So, on YouTube, what you will find as you log in, as you sign up, and as you register, is that there was a new redesign, a new user interface that we launched in January of 2012. There is a menu guide. If you think for a minute about how you program your DVR, you actually, most people program their DVR a couple times a year, right? You put in the shows that you love, and you're set. People don't actually program their DVRs with that much regularity. Okay? The same way that people are beginning to approach YouTube. So when you're a signed-in user, you actually subscribe to shows, there's a menu guide, okay, and a new interface and a new organization of the content to help find content. The reason that this was important is because we also launched we announced it in October of last year, and in January we started to launch a new class and caliber of content. So we announced that there were 100 content creators that YouTube was going to partner with, that we were going to launch on the system. We began kicking off in January, and it is October, and we've launched about 92 of these channels. There's been a lot of press about this. You read about it in the Ad Age, etc., but a lot of noise about the original content creators. So these are real content creators. So stars like Amy Poehler, that's Tony Hawk, Ray Wilson, Sofia Vergara from Modern Family. This is real Hollywood talent creating scripted content that is very different from what we used to think of as the user-generated content that was available on YouTube. Okay? So part of what we are doing is teaching users that there is all types of content, that there are actually shows on YouTube that they can access and experience. Okay, I'm going to play you a short reel that gives you a sense of the original content creators and the approach that we're taking to content.
Hi there, I'm Dan Lee. Green Wilson.
Alicia Day here.
Thomas Surround. Andy Butchell.
Hi, I'm Brooke Charvet.
Baron Davis. We're going to have this awesome channel. We want it to be documented, creative.
From comics to board games to video games.
Horror, thriller, sci-fi.
Your favorite sports figures. Good health and well-being, love, relationships, scripted comedy, and reality. The tween clubhouse on YouTube. YouTube is the place where people already go.
With hundreds of millions of viewers.
And they're able to reach this massive audience worldwide.
You've got a base right there that they can write their comments, they can engage with the video.
There's something wonderful about instantly have people give you feedback that is going to distinguish YouTube from all the other platforms.
So incredibly far-reaching, instantaneous.
It goes to your phone, it goes to your office, it goes to your laptop, it goes to your home computer. The days of linear media are changing fast.
The immediacy of being able to have an idea or identify a piece of talent and just try it.
This is a platform for artistry.
Creativity.
Fresh, cool, and hip stuff. Just thinking differently.
Unfiltered.
A spark of imagination that can be blown up into a mass hit.
It's a call for those who want to be at the forefront of what's going on next.
This is only the beginning of something really, really special.
Okay, so that gives you a sense of the type of content that we're creating. Again, we signed on with 100 creators last fall, and we began launching the new channels starting in January of 2012. Right? By the end of this year, we will have launched all of them. I'm going to show you one channel. This is the page for the Wigs channel. I think this is a really good example of the type of content we're creating. If you want to find it, I'm not going to play you any content from the Wigs channel, but it's just youtube.com/Wigs, W-I-G-S. Okay. The channel is created by directors and producers who are real movie makers, Fried Green Tomatoes, Black Swan, lots and lots of Hollywood content that we are all familiar with. It is episodes that are anywhere between 9 minutes and 11 minutes long. There's a lot of freedom and flexibility that the producers and that the actors actually have within the content. Last spring in May, when many of you are familiar with the digital content newfronts, when AOL and Hulu and Yahoo and MSN and Google all announced their content slates, we had an event and we had the actresses from Wigs join us for this event. And it's essentially it's a show, and each episode profiles the story of one of these women. Okay, so it was fascinating to me in talking with some of the people who were on the show that the excitement that the actual talent has was palpable, because these are people who are used to showing up. And what is your average 30-minute show? It is 22 minutes of content. It is 8 minutes of commercial, and that's it, right? And one of these young women was telling me, first of all, it was adorable, because here she was, Jennifer Beals was one of the actresses in the show, and she was so just kind of starstruck, even though she'd been working with her, for months as they were working on this, on launching this content. But she was saying how she had an idea for something else that could happen in one of the episodes, and if it had been any other type, if it had been television or movie, there would have been like, what are you talking about? Like, the script's been locked for months, like we're working on, down to the second. And actually, her idea, the director loved, and they incorporated into it, and that episode ended up not being 11 minutes. That episode ended up being 11 minutes and 45 seconds, and that was okay. So you think about this caliber and class of content, and not only what it gives the users, but also that it gives the talent a lot of creative freedom that they haven't had on other platforms. Okay, so this is a great example. It's youtube.com/Wigs. The second part of this is, so for us, it's content, it's the user experience, and it's also the business model. So one of the challenges, right, when you think about, we use the word clutter, is how actually do you break through, all right? So how does a marketer get through to a prospective consumer and develop that connection in this day and age where you've got all of these, trends at play? So think about what happens on the day after the Super Bowl, when hundreds, millions of people go onto Google and they type great Super Bowl commercial or hottest Super Bowl, best Super Bowl ad. Okay? What's actually happening there is that the user, the person, is choosing to engage in content. Research shows time and time again that when people choose, they remember. So if you think for a minute about the difference between deciding what you want for lunch and specking that sandwich, you know what you ate that day. Big difference than just kind of if food comes into the office and there's a bunch of random sandwiches and you just kind of, When people choose, they remember, okay? So when we think about the business model that needs to be an outcome of all of these trends, we have announced and launched and been working with a business model. It's called TrueView, okay? Just think about what happens when somebody chooses to watch the ad. So we have a program every January called Ad Blitz. It's where all of the Super Bowl ads are loaded up in this gallery, and then people can come in and they can vote the ads up and down. I'm going to show you the ad that won, right? And as you're watching it, just think to yourself, is this commercial or content? And could you imagine people choosing to watch this? This is the ad that won.
So then I said, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm flattered that you love chocolate, but I'm here strictly in a professional. What's wrong with him? He thinks you're naked. My shell is brown, It just looks like my milk chocolate is showing. Only a fool would think I'd actually show up naked.
So it's that kind of party, isn't it?
I'm sexy and I know it.
Okay, so you think to yourself, creative or content, it's content. That commercial on YouTube alone garnered over 3 million views. So again, Modern Family, 4 million an episode. One commercial of Miss Brown doing her, like, wiggle dance in her chocolate outfit. 3 million views on YouTube alone. Okay, so again, what happens when people seek out and actually choose? So the way the TrueView works quite literally is whenever you're on YouTube, and this is small on the screen, so I'll describe it, but when you are on YouTube and you see a video loading, if you see a little gold bar, a little diamond, and a little gold bar along the bottom, that means that there's an ad loading. With the TrueView ad product, the user actually has the opportunity to skip the ad. So what will happen is the ad will start to play, and the user has 5 seconds where they can say, skip this ad. So if the marketer doesn't actually capture their attention in the first 5 seconds, user skips the ad, user moves on directly to the content. Okay? So the way this model works is that the advertiser actually doesn't pay for that user unless the user watches to completion of the ad. Okay? That's why it's called TrueView. And for the user, they're choosing. They get to make the decision if they want to watch the ad or not. Okay, so we believe very strongly that in this world of niche content, audience fragmentation, all of these consumption devices, the commercials not coming along with, right, the content when you watch them on an iPad or on a smartphone, right, or off of Netflix or Hulu or etc., that it necessitates a new model. We believe this new model is essentially user choice for video advertising. Okay, so this is my final slide. What I challenge you all to think about, most people in this room are likely involved in some kind of 2013 business planning. Okay? I challenge you to do what I did last 2012, which is when and if you get a new computer, but you don't need a new computer to do this, don't bring anything with you. That means no business plans, no PowerPoint content. Force yourself to do that. This is for those of you who can't see. It's just a screenshot that says File New. Force yourself to create new content, because what happens is that we all just iterate a little. So we save over. Just think to yourself for a sec the number of file save as, and you're actually saving at a 2012 business plan or presentation, right, or customer approach. You're saving over, you're iterating, right? Think about what happens if we all start with just a new approach for 2013 as we begin to really explode the real full potential of video and the content that's available online. So with that, I will take questions.
Excellent. Actually, I'll start with one just as a segue from that last slide. Try to point my lollipop in the right direction. So isn't that already an inherent challenge to media buyers and planners on behalf of their clients who are already making plans for summer of 2013, fall 2013, looking at previous flowcharts of television, largely expenditure, and basically plotting their GRPs from broadcast, GRPs from prime cable, etc. How do you think differently when inherently what you have from last year is the starting point?
Yeah. I mean, I think, Tim, this is really hard, and this would be a conversation about leadership and disruption, because it's really hard to approach 2013 and say, actually, we're going to clean slate up. We're going to do it as though we've never worked in this industry. We're going to imagine that we are management consultants just looking at the data that we've got today as it exists, and we're going to plan 2013 from a completely new place. And that is very, very difficult and takes real innovation, courage, and leadership. It's really hard. So it's not really the answer. But.
Well, it's also interesting, too, is where that leadership comes from. Does it come from the marketing departments of the clients? Does it come from the agency leaders that are supposed to be helping those marketers through? To be honest with you, and I don't mean to sort of, I don't want to sort of hijack the conversation, but a lot of it has been fingers pointing at the other one, I'm the stupid, right? And nobody seems to want to make that change because nobody wants to break it.
Yeah, nobody wants to break it, and there's a lot of old adages. I know 50% of my advertising works if only I knew which half. We would contend that today you can know which half. There's the, got fired for buying IBM, so what's the equivalent of that, right? Just take your last year's plan that largely worked and just tweak it a little. But again, it's like you can accelerate. It'll look like it's working, keep going right into a wall, because the day will come. Like, how many people in this room have teenagers? Okay, so a small number. But just think for a minute. When this generation of kids graduates from college, like 4 years from now, is in the workforce, right, and begins to be the buying constituency that many of these marketers are going after, they don't act, look, react, engage like any consumer that most companies are used to going after. So I think you're right, Tim. I think it is often a kind of I'm the stupid, and we all hear hundreds of conversations around this. I was in a conversation with a video game marketer last week, and they were talking about how they do this unbelievable innovative planning, but then they run out of time, and they chicken out, and they go right back to what pretty much worked on last year's game launch plan, right? So the challenge to you all is just don't do that, right? Have the courage to just, file news, start again.
Is Suzie right? Is she wrong? Questions? This is the big G here. These are the ones that are dominating online video.
Challenge me on trivia. Challenge me on user choice.
I've got a ton of questions. I'll keep going. But go ahead. Please tell us where you're from as well.
Sam Thompson with Progress Partners, an advisory firm in the digital media space. But speaking to ads or content, giving brands a direction of what kind of content works on television versus what kind of content works in YouTube when it comes to ads.
Okay, so the question is what kind of content works on YouTube versus what kind of content works on television.
How do you
Yeah.
How do you start to inform? So someone's going to make that big leap. Sorry.
Someone's going to make a leap. How do they change it up creatively?
Yeah. So do they? Are you encouraging them to try exactly what's worked on television?
No.
Right? So,
No. So here's what we do know. Okay, we are all going to look at each other in a couple of years and say, we knew it wasn't 60s online. We knew it wasn't 30s. We were pretty sure it wasn't 15s. What were we thinking? So no, it's not just porting what you've been doing on TV to digital. It's not. We know that. And we know that with online creative, we know that there are best practices, right? We know that engagement, right, dialogue, conversation, the opportunity for back and forth, we know that that's a best practice. We know that scalability, meaning being able to blow out a message and have massive audience, we know that the opportunity for that is a best practice. We know that often letting a user know you know what platform you're on is a best practice, meaning these media platforms are big enough that marketers should be thinking about custom experiences if you're on Facebook or Twitter or on YouTube, because the audience sizes are just massive. So there are a lot of best practices. We know that shareability is a best practice. So if you're writing things down, I would say shareability, right, the opportunity for dialogue and scale, are some of the kind of check when you're looking at your creative, just my creative, And then it's the creative as content or commercial as content. I mean, there's all the, humor, the rest of it.
What's the biggest resistance you have from TV advertisers and putting more money into either original or YouTube presented or just generally online video content?
Okay, I think one of the biggest challenges is that we have is, and I'm being very candid, is auction versus reservation. Okay, so that is a technical aspect of the way the TrueView ad opportunity was launched for Google. We believe in auction, right? But there are a lot of marketing brand managers who have specific finite budgets, and auction doesn't work for them because they need to spend that money that quarter and they need to know exactly what the CPM is going to be. So that's a very technical aspect of it. I think it's also having the right number of users on the right content at the right time. can also be the challenge.
So brand safety a bit?
Brand safety is not, I mean, so I've been at the company for 6 years. We've been talking about brand safety since the day I got there, and there are hundreds of thousands of opportunities for brand safe experiences on YouTube. It's not so much of an issue these days.
Any other questions? Please.
If you guys don't ask one, then Tim's going to ask one more.
Yeah, and we all know how painful that's going to be. So, all right, so I'll throw another one at you. I mean, in essence, what you're kind of at the cutting edge of is this, what I believe is this sort of melange or merger between two historically different activities. One is sort of the brand advertising, television, GRP, CPM kind of model. And the other is more of an action-oriented, audience-loving, show me metrics of usage and furtherances, clicks or name grabs, email, whatever. Right? So in essence, it almost becomes like a new jump ball between two historically different activities. The brand messaging thing on one side and the direct or promotional or action-oriented media model on the other. Which is it? And no, you can't answer hybrid. Because, or is it really? I mean, brand marketers try to get more direct marketing types of sensibilities and vice versa.
I don't even think it's hybrid. I think it's super, super challenging, and that it is quite literally marketers trying to figure out how to navigate in a world of mobile, social, and video. I mean, I think you have to start a little from scratch. I think you have to start from a place of just really understanding your brand and what you're trying to communicate, and then try and figure out what your consumer segmentation is, and then try and figure out where those people live and what's the best way to get to them. But I think there is no silver bullet. So for years in digital, there's been the thought that, well, if we could just have an equivalent measurement to TV, then like hundreds of millions of dollars will flow. Well, we're pretty close to that, right? And the hundreds of millions of dollars are flowing, but not all in one, right? Or if we could just have ad format, right? If everyone could just have the same ad formats on all their, but there is no silver bullet. I don't think that it's one single thing. I think that it's what I just said.
Well, people are trying. Yesterday we had some folks around sort of the measurement and currency conversation trying to do their own initiatives, and if that happened, we had folks from the IAB here yesterday basically trying to standardize the first, if you will, standardizable ads for online /
Well, the
video.
IAB is working on something called 3Ms. It's making measurement make sense. It's very smart, very powerful. They have all the right constituencies involved. So that will all help tremendously. But when that happens and when there is common measurement, it doesn't mean that the entire ecosystem and all the challenges are solved.
Do you have any insight as to how much of your video content, either through the YouTube system, is being consumed in non-desktop, non-online environments, kind of over the top, devices, that kind of thing, or is it still too early to kind of get some?
Yeah, I don't have the exact statistics on that for you, but I can tell you that YouTube is the second largest. m.youtube.com, which is our mobile site, is the second largest video sharing site in the world, right? And also YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world.
So if I watched YouTube content on a Sony Blu-ray DVD connected device, that's being accounted for on the mobile side, or on my Roku box, or?
I don't know that.
You're watching.
Yeah.
You're doing it via the app. So if you're on a Google TV.
Okay, hold on. Answer it, and it sounds like
Christina Hahn.
Tell why your answer is
Christina Hahn from Google. I work at Google. Christina Hahn. So it depends on how you're watching it. So if you're on a Google TV, there's a YouTube app on Google TV, and you can enter the app and watch it that way, which the views are not counting towards the same way it would count as if you were on your Google TV, you went into Chrome, and you launched in Chrome, and you were watching it. That's basically the exact same experience you have in a desktop experience. So the app is different than what happens in a web browser, which anytime you try to open a video on your phone or when you're on a Google TV-like player, the first question it asks you is, would you like to open it in the app or would you like to open it in your web browser? So that's the differentiating point.
Well, so that you know that you're in a unique position then to help that standardization process, right? Because at the end of the day, a marketer doesn't really want to hear that there's 7 different log files for 7 different consumption environments, because your platforms are not just you,
No, that's
others
right.
as well.
It should be seamless, that you can have one ad creative render across all mobile and all other screens.
That's the hope. So we have time for one more question. Any brave soul want to challenge what apparently is a rigged audience of Google executives? Now's your chance. I mean, this is a great opportunity. Going once, going twice. Thank you very much. This was very
Thank you,
informative.
Tim. And I hope I told you a few things you didn't know. Thank you.
Every single one. We just got a little feedback. Yeah. They said, that's good. I'm fine. One of your kiss ass.
Okay, we're going to start moving into the next panel, so please, if you either take your seats or depart the premises or whatever. Lots of good content, folks, on this next panel, so you've heard the YouTube process, and now you're going to hear from various fledgling content providers who are trying to follow your footsteps. Get going. So have a seat, everybody. Okay, so we've heard from the big G about the future of online video, or the today of online video, or the tomorrow of online video. Mike Rosen from my old haunts at Starcom is going to panel moderate a discussion on the next steps of those conversations, in particular with folks who are a little bit more close to the original production process, the folks who are finding those niches, trying to create programming and compelling content for those niches, and who lay awake at night trying to figure out, okay, we've got the programming, how do we monetize? Is it advertised? Is it not? Is it something else? Will it ever monetize? Etc. I think Mike's probably in a good position because he's in a buy-side agency environment that struggles, I'm sure, with this balance between that which is historically TV and that which is, at least for the near term, a digital video box, right? And trying to figure out bridges between the two, some of which I'm sure work, some of which are challenging. And I will let Mike introduce his panel, and questions are expected this time. And nobody leaves until we get a couple of questions from the audience. Thanks. Take it away. Thanks.
And we stay awake at night too, along the panel, but they look incredibly well rested and a handsome panel. So lucky to have them. And since they know themselves better than I do, and fortunate to meet somebody for the first time, I figured I'd let them introduce themselves. And I'll just start off. Mike Rosen, president of Activation with Starcom, which the activation, fancy word for buying. So we are in charge of the media investments for our clients across this country. It's excited to be here because I grew up in our business on that traditional network TV buyer side of things. So I came up seeing the world transform, not just now to online video, but first even where cable was sort of a unique idea and a sort of a challenge to the ecosystem that was the world of television. So we made it through that transformation pretty much intact. And we've come after 25 years ago, come to accept that cable was here to stay. And now it's all about online video and new sources of content. And big believer that sight, sound, and motion is just an incredibly powerful way to tell stories, whether it's entertainment stories, news and information, or advertising marketing. So we're big believers in the art form, so to speak, and now this is tremendously exciting for how much it's growing. So without further ado, we'll introduce the panel. So Frank.
Frank Besteiro, Head of Business Development for the AOL On Network.
Kevin Long, CEO, Uncommon Content.
Rob Barnett, founder and CEO of My Damn Channel.
Brian Hunt, Head of Creative Development for Yahoo's Original Video.
I thought we'd start right sort of with the title of this, which we talk about premium content. And I find that, let's get right to probably maybe the most confusing and misunderstood word now in our English language, from the former misunderstood word of nonplussed. Nonplussed in the Oxford Dictionary used to mean so confused and surprised that you had no clue what to do. And of course, we being Americans, we completely changed the meaning to be the opposite now. And when we talk about being nonplussed, we're like we're unfazed, we're unperturbed. So to that, the word premium. What do we mean by premium? I am so nonplussed by what the definition of premium is, because to me, premium used to stand for certain things about perhaps the cost of making. Does that make it premium because it's expensive? Is that what premium means? Is it about scale and all that? So I thought a good way to start out is, what do we mean by premium? What is it that makes something premium, and therefore, from a price-value relationship point of view, makes it important to us? So, Frank, you want to kick it off?
Sure. So from our perspective, premium to us means something that we have a connection to, right? It's not just about the dollars involved. It's about the effort involved in actually getting it produced, developing the concept, creating something that's exclusive to your platform, something that you have a vested interest in seeing succeed, as opposed to something that's licensed that we can just throw up there and gain video views. For us, premium means really that effort behind development, production, and of course, publicity around content that lives on our platforms.
Kevin, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think the word premium is used frequently as a comparative analysis to user-generated content, which is, by definition, in many instances, not professionally produced, so not premium. So premium always comes, is defined by added value. So most of the premium content online is professionally produced, well-casted, written, developed, etc. But I think the word is overused because it's used in context of thinking about UGC.
I think in the minds of the audience, it means the really, really good shit. In the minds of a business owner, I think for us, we look at every original video project as its own portfolio company. So we're always matching the investment being made in content, either from my checkbook or yours, from an advertiser, to what we think we can realistically get back from that piece of business. So we really look at it as serious business as opposed to just kind of close your eyes, upload it to the web and hope it does well. But then also I think a much simpler, less nonplussed definition is we're looking for pros in front of the camera and behind the camera, because we know that if we don't have that, the odds are really stacked against the audience attention to it.
You agree?
I do agree with that. Actually, I think there's a few different perspectives to look at it. The user side of it, there's a real relevance that becomes involved to what's premium or not. The first time I saw a Fred video on YouTube, I was nonplussed. I was like, what is this? But that clearly went on to become premium for some age group. So for us, though, that I think the relevance for our audience is important, but it's the same type of thing for us. We want to make sure there's a level of storytelling involved. That doesn't mean scripted, whether scripted or not. There's a quality of talent behind the camera, in front of the camera. And I think it does one other facet of it is the potential brand, the advertiser, and I think they might have a different definition of what premium means, but I think it does fall into that level of quality. And again, there's a relevance to their target audience when that comes along. It's almost like that senator who was like, I can't define porn, but I know it when I see it. Like, I think there's an element of that too.
That's good, because the porn was going to be my next question. No, these are not porn sites. No, but I think it's funny because each of you went at it from a little bit of a different angle. And looking at it from those the advertisers and us as the agencies that will tend to support it, because that's going to be obviously important to the future business model, that idea of what is premium or price value is challenging, because a lot of times, and what we've learned in the evolution of television, is it's not always how much money did it cost to make, or who the talent is. We learned that very fast when the television business changed from all scripted to, unscripted. When Survivor came along and sort of tested the notion of, all right, what do we exactly mean, or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire as a primetime phenomenon, was, wait a second, a game show on network television or this weird unscripted drama, that's not what we're used to seeing as premium. That's not West Wing. That's not so. But then, because it succeeded with the audience, because the audience ended up voting for that in a sense as meaningful to them, then all of a sudden we changed our tune and said, well, I guess that's premium too, even though we wouldn't have thought about it in a traditional sense. And that's why I think a lot of your answers have to do with what goes into it, how much effort, how much quality in terms of some sort of objective standard. But I do think the challenge for us is, what does the audience think? Because if the audience likes it and it's the right audience for our products, then it has a value to us. And I think that's where, when we have these conversations, it gets interesting, because we sometimes come at it for a different definition. I would even argue that something that might be user-generated, especially if it's user-generated by the consumers of the products that we're trying to reach, then all of a sudden, then it's social. Then it's like, all right, those kind of users, we like it if they interact and there's some content there. So I think it's a subject that I think it's very interesting to debate, because I think all of you are right, but it's also a matter of in what degrees and for what reasons. So, and to that point, we talked about coming at it from the content itself versus the audience it's trying to reach, and having grown up in the agency side and there was the TV group and the digital group, and they came up through sort of different cultures. And if you ask our typical digital expert, they'd say audience matters first. Who you're reaching sometimes is more important than context. So we have this ongoing debate: is what comes first, context or audience? What do you think? I mean, there's this sort of battle going on about what should take precedence: who we're reaching and the ability to target that individual, or the environment in which that individual or those individuals are seeing the message.
Okay. So I think it's really the audience.
Glad you picked that seat, right?
For us, it's audience, right? If you're going to take the time and the expense to develop a piece of content, you want to make certain that it's a content that's going to resonate with your audience, because that in turn is what's going to bring the advertisers. So you can actually recoup your costs, and not only that, but also build upon that experience. So from our perspective, anything we do, data comes into play. Right? It's absolutely a necessity for us to be able to take a look at the data, understand what our audience is watching and consuming, and then develop and produce concepts that are in line with that in order to then grow our audience from there and make it more a social experience, but also one that advertisers are going to sponsor and plan to get into.
I think it's that argument of art versus science, and I think it depends on what kind of content you're making. So I have an interesting role in that. I'm the CEO of Uncommon Content, but I'm also the vice chairman of Howcast, which is an instructional video company. So for a company like Howcast, where we make instructional videos, data determines a lot of the content we make, because we carefully analyze the market, what people are searching for, and then make informed decisions based on data and analytics as to what type of content we're going to produce moving forward. With Uncommon Content, the art informs the science. We make things that are artful, we create shows, we create stars out of our host, and then we take the feedback from the audience and use that data to inform future episodes. So I think you have to think about it in terms of what we're trying to make in terms of content. Is it utility content? Is it entertainment? Because if you try to make entertainment thinking that you're making it for a particular audience, you inevitably fail. When I made records, there was a term called making a crossover record, which was pretty funny, because you don't cross over to the audience crosses over to you. And people, if you could make a crossover record every time you made a record, every record would be a hit. But it's a 98% fail rate in the record business, just like most content businesses. So you have to be informed when you're making entertainment by the art.
It's like saying I'm going to make a viral video.
You bring up data and how powerful, having video content live online, live on a platform that can do much, much more than the traditional linear television platform. more going in, more coming back in terms of understanding, as you said, which is what's working, what's not, and also being able to take the consumer into a deeper experience, having them go beyond just the exposure. Because that's what our world has been. For the most part, what video was before digital came along, before the online environment was, it was a one-way conversation, it was a one-way direction. Now there's so much more to it. Does it make you a little crazy that what our industry tends to do is kind of go back to lowest common denominator and try to evaluate, as you read about, all the progress, and again, I use progress loosely, about, online OCR and the measurement, and make it all sort of fit the TV measurement rather than recognize the difference. Because I find, at least on our end, there's a reason for that, but it can also be frustrating because I think it's, one step forward, two steps back. So does that drive you a little crazy?
Well, I like my current life a lot better than my old lives when it comes to data, because I spent part one in radio, and when the ratings were good, we all congratulated ourselves and took credit. And when they were bad, we screamed and yelled at Arbitron. I spent most of my life at MTV and VH1. When those ratings were great, it was all because of us, and when they were bad, it was Nielsen's fault. So in this life, the data is direct, and everyone in this room that's attached to any piece of online content has an opportunity 100 times better than Arbitron and Nielsen to really either become an expert at analyzing your data or find someone and hire someone who is an expert. And then the beauty of it is that you can learn so quickly and adjust your content, sometimes on a daily basis at budgets that you could never afford in television, where you'd go into a meeting, everyone would yell and scream, and then 6 or 9 months later you'd start to make adjustments. So our world is so much faster, and our world is so much more informed that if the overall numbers are still not comparing to television, the minute that they do, guys like you will start moving more of your budgets our way. And we're moving there day by day by day.
I mean, I think the data is only as valuable as the way you interpret it. So when you look at views as an advertiser or a brand, if you have 10 million views, but the average view time is 3 seconds, how valuable is that? So another thing that's going to be increasingly important is retention time. And the data right now that you're provided when you look on a YouTube page is views and subscriptions. But what's not there is total hours viewed, or the retention time, the average time per video, which frankly is a much more important statistic than views, because I don't know any brand that wants 40 million views that average 2 seconds. So, a lot of what's being pushed out in terms of readily available information, frankly, is not the information that matters. Retention time speaks more to quality, and that's going to be, I think, increasingly more important, as will total hours viewed on a particular digital channel.
But we're still talking, for the most part, about being exposed to the content, your content, and then by nature, the pre-roll or mid-roll or whatever that's along with it. When do we get to a point, which television has not been able to do, where you're closer to it, not easy, but to where behaviors and brand metric, brand health metric, and purchase intent, things that you might be able to measure certainly better than a linear television environment, is there a possibility to get away from the same sort of criteria where it is still about cost per thousand, maybe it's about the quality of the cost per thousand and the scale, to your point, Rob, about when you get to scale, we know we can get to scale. As an agency, when we build a media mix for our clients, we can get to scale 1,000 different ways. We know we can reach people because consumers are consuming a whole lot of media, still a lot of television, they're online, there's a lot of multitasking. So scale's not so much the issue. The issue is when can we start to change the currency or the success metric beyond just exposure. So do any of you think we can get there with all this data? Can the data tell us more than just how often they're watching, how many are watching, and for how long? Can we start to link to some consumer behaviors that get us a little deeper into, helping our marketers get, move the needle in terms of what their KPIs are.
I mean, for us, I think the big thing is the who's watching, right? That's the one part that you I think are alluding at a little bit. Whether it's brand study or lifted your brand or purchase intent, I think that is going to be still tied to a lot of research reports and that connected afterwards. But at Yahoo at least, and we're not 100% there yet, but we're getting there, is who's watching the program and making sure it goes to the right people. So like our front page gets about every 10 minutes, I think, 40,000 different front pages. So that's our fire hose into our program. It's a huge promotional tool that we drive. And when someone's logged in or registered, we know more about them, we know what they like to watch. So we can continue to promote in a way that's not available on television right now. It's strictly by content. So I think that's a start in the right direction, and the further we get down that road, the more we'll be able to say to you exactly after that runs, here's who watched it. I don't think that's far away.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think we're starting to see the conversation becoming much more educated with advertisers now. It's no longer just about